I'd like to shift gears now to the second topic that we were interested in exploring with you, and that is you wrote a couple of articles, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, addressing the mental health issues in the judiciary. And as you know, in my term as president of the Austin Bar, I've kind of made that a priority, not judiciary specifically, but lawyer well-being, across the profession and in our local bar. And you were gracious enough to write this article called "Don't Forget Judges Are People Too," which you followed up very shortly after with a Texas Lawyer article titled "The Mental Challenges Judges Face." And we're going to post links to those articles in the show notes for this episode for folks to see. But tell us a little about what led you to write those articles.
Well, so I'm on the Wellbeing Committee that you started with the Austin Bar. And as I recall it, we were in a brainstorming session of articles that could be in this well-being series. And I think it was Erica Grigg, I'm not sure. But I think it was Erica Grigg at TLAP. I think everybody probably knows Erica. Her personality is big enough that if you don't know her, you'll meet her soon. I love Erica. But anyway, she said something about we've always wanted to come up with something to address judges and get them talking about these issues. And I volunteered, and I got to be honest with you, I wasn't quite sure what I would write, but I volunteered to write an article. And then as I started writing, I started thinking about it, I knew exactly what I wanted to write about, which was just kind of a dark time in my life and how judging affected it. And then, of course, the fear and the self-doubt came in of, oh my gosh, do I really want to share this with anyone? Is this just me writing about me? And is it really going to help anyone? If it's not, then why am I doing this? And all the doubt. And I have to tell you, I wrote that article. It only took me, I bet I wrote that thing in half an hour, 45 minutes, because it was so personal. It was easy to write. That I sat there and looked at the send button for I don't know how long before I sent it to the Austin Bar, because it made me nervous. And it went out, and I didn't, it was published. I didn't hear anything in a couple of days. Well, all of a sudden people started sharing it on social media. And the next thing I know, that, it took off. And suddenly judges were chiming in. And because I had sat as a judge, a lot of these folks are personal friends, and I started getting texts and emails and from judges I knew. And the next thing I know, I started getting handwritten notes from judges all over the country that I didn't know. And I realized that unwittingly on my part, I'd kind of hit a nerve, that there's a lot more people struggling with the very issues I identified than I realized. And then, of course, the Texas Lawyer contacted me after that to see if I'd write a follow-up, and that's what the follow-up was about. But I think the first one is in the Austin Bar. They got the.
It's easy to forget, I think, for people that judges often encounter people on the worst days of their life. You're dealing with family, you're dealing with freedom, you're dealing with finances, and by the time someone's in a courtroom, particularly in an appellate courtroom, something has gone wrong for somebody to get to that point. And I think you just kind of think, well, judges are sort of these automatons. They get on there and make these decisions and you just go home at night. But of course, you're going to take that with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the key. And I think, trial, I've always told, when I was on the bench, I always told my trial judge friends that I thought they had it harder because they have to look at the people. They have to see them. They have to see the emotion and especially if you roll from the bench, how difficult that is. But appellate, what's so hard about appellate too is, in my situation, I detailed in that article, a lot I was going through with my parents' care at that point, and just how incredibly depressing that was. Well, then all of a sudden you get into a record the examples I used, what I did, I had 3 in a row. I had a gang rape of a 15-year-old. That was a long trial, so it was a long record. And then I had a very, very close, which is unusual, by the way, termination of parental rights appeal. And then another criminal one for starvation of an infant, intentional starvation of an infant. And I didn't realize that in combination with what was going on in my outside life was bringing me down. And I made some adjustments once I realized it, that really helped. And that's why, that's what I suggested in the article, some tips to help judges and to help lawyers help judges. But you're right, Jody. I mean, these judges, they have stuff going on in their life too. And they're making decisions, and a lot of times they don't realize the effect it's having on them. I got a handwritten note from a district judge across the country who said, I've been on the bench for 5 years now, read your article, and a light bulb came on. And it made me realize why I've been treating my wife and daughter wrongly. And I'm making some changes.
Wow.
And I thought, I couldn't believe it. And the honesty was amazing to me. And I thought, okay, you know what? People need to start talking about these issues more.
Absolutely.
It's helping people.
What are the tips? Do you have a few that you could just kind of offer? We'll certainly post in the show notes, but.
Yeah, I mean, for judges, and they're pretty, and they're mostly simple and common sense. But for judges, now look, it's difficult because every judge has a different docket, right? Mine, on the Austin Court of Appeals, we were actually close to 70% civil, 30% criminal. So what I realized I needed to do is, if I had a really nasty criminal case or termination case or some other just depressing content, I need to mix in your regular civil case on the next one. Because as an appellate judge, you can choose, right? You can choose what you work on next. Well, mix in yours or Todd's cases after the particularly depressing criminal case, or even a tax case or an administrative case. Just don't sit and read records for 3 weeks on horribly depressing stuff.
Gosh.
But also, even for the judge, you can't get away from it. Let's say it's a district judge on the criminal side, that's very hard to get away from it. Make sure you're actually staying in contact with the outside world. I think the toughest thing for judges is isolation. It's very weird in Texas. You go through an election, you're on the road constantly, you're constantly shaking hands and meeting new people. And I mean, whether we like it or not, you become a politician for a short time. And then you win, you have your investiture. That's a big to do and kind of party. And then you go to your chambers and everything goes quiet. Everything goes quiet. And the phone doesn't ring, which sounds, by the way, for a practitioner sounds awesome. But for, after about a year of it, you realize the phone doesn't ring. You might get 10 emails a day, which again, sounds awesome to a practitioner. But at some level, if you're going through something, that isolation is not healthy. And so as a judge, you've got to be willing to reach out to people and to go to lunch, go to a bar function, just see people, and make sure you get somewhere where they'll treat you like a normal human being. Whether that's, your kids' sporting activities, church, again, going to lunch, whatever the case may be. Find people, for me, it was people like Todd that I've known for 25 years. Find people who will not treat you any differently just because you're, and be a normal person, and it'll help immensely.
Those are great comments. I think with mental health across the board in the profession and among the judiciary, you hit on one of the major points, which is we need to get this stuff out in the open. People are suffering in silence, and they've done it for too long. And that's really one of the aims of programming directed to lawyer well-being, and now I suppose judicial well-being. I will say that I was impressed and proud of you for putting that story out there, because I think you've described the result. You were able to help some people who maybe didn't even know that they needed help. So when that light bulb went off for that judge who sent you the note, I mean, that had to make it worthwhile right there, I would think.
Yeah, thank you. And it absolutely did. And, it just, like I said, a lot of notes. I mean, one who described just going through a termination trial and how it just kicked her in the gut. She couldn't sleep for days. And, just realizing that people are waking up and going, oh gosh, this really is affecting me when I leave the office. And like you say, Todd, so much of it's just talking about it. And like I said, the moment I realized there was a problem, I was able to work it out. I mean, I know there are other people who it's actually more of a mental issue and you need to get professional help and things of that nature. And I encourage those judges or lawyers to do that. But a lot of times for a lot of people, it's just realizing there's an issue
Right.
and figuring out a way to work around it and solve it. Cause I loved my job. I mean, like I said, I would have been a judge for a long time had the electorate had me. It wasn't that the job was wonderful. I just had to figure out a way. I mean, that was a weird situation with both parents sick and dying. That doesn't happen very often. It just happened to be while I was a judge. And you just have to figure out a way to manage life sometimes. And of course, that's managing what you do for a living as well.
Sure.